Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to The Unstoppable Singer. I am your host, Danielle Tucker. I'm a singer, a vocal coach, and a lead singer with the Mighty Untouchables Band. I produced and hosted the Pandemic Proof Singer Summit 1 and 2, and now I'm producing and hosting The Unstoppable Singer, which is what you're watching tonight. The Unstoppable Singer is a live interview style show where I follow the lives of real life professional singers. And these singers have made some incredible achievements in their lives and careers. We cover everything from voice work, making money, booking gigs, songwriting, recording, session work, and a lot more. But we really focus on going from surviving to thriving in this business. So if this sounds like it's for you, stick around because I'd like to introduce you to my guest tonight. It is Jon Robert Hall. He is an American singer-songwriter that began singing in movies, TV shows, and albums. He's contributed his voice to Florida Georgia Line, Childish Gambino, Celine Dion, Josh Groban, Michael Jackson, and many more. He has sang in movies such as Armageddon, Deep Impact, Jungle Book 2, Tarzan, The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, Star Wars Rogue One, Glee, Sing 2, and many, many more. He also starred on Broadway's Wicked, the musical, as Fiyero, and lost my place. Stacee Jaxx in Rock of Ages, and Tom Chisum in Grease Live on Fox. He has written music for many artists across all genres and is currently working on an immersive musical experience of The Great Gatsby that'll be premiering in Las Vegas in 2023 at the Virgin Hotel, Las Vegas. So let me bring him on. Jon,
Hey,
how are
hi
you?
Danielle. I'm
Thank you
great.
for Good. Thanks for being here tonight. It's really great to see you and meet you virtually tonight.
Yeah, it looks beautiful in your background. I should have put up some Christmas lights or something.
It's very festive here now. It's
Looks
okay.
amazing. Wow.
I have kids. I had a lot of time to work on this. So
Oh, it looks so good.
thank
Yeah,
you.
it's good
Thank
to be
you.
here.
So this is basically for reals our fireside chat.
Yeah, I know. I have a fire out there, but the vibe is not as cool as that. That looks
Oh,
great with the tree. Yes.
yeah. Thanks. Well, Jon, let's just dive in. Let's talk about this year. I know this year's kind of wrapping up, but
Mhm.
how's the year been for you coming back from kind of a crazy couple of years? What are you involved in right now? What do you have going on?
Thank you. Yeah, this year has been crazy. As an entertainer, life is always just this,
Mm.
constantly. And, um, you know, COVID has been tough. So that kind of set me and my wife, Tiffany Malari, who is actually just headed back to Wicked to do, I met her in Wicked, and
Awesome.
she's a
I love
dancer.
that.
She was a flying monkey. And yeah, I was Fiyero. And so we did that about 4 years ago together. And that's where we
Mhm.
met. And then the pandemic happened and everything just kind of like it started to be one of those lulls for most of us.
Yeah.
So this year's kind of been the little bit of a comeback. And we lived in Nashville all of basically end of 2020 and all of 2021. We lived in
Mhm.
Nashville, Tennessee, and I was signed to a record label, and I was writing an album and writing for other artists and doing artist stuff. And kind of
Mhm.
it was sort of not a pivot because I'd always done that stuff, but it was definitely a new venture for me.
Mhm.
And so we ended up moving back here like about 8 months ago, and
Mhm.
it's been just a transitional year, really. Just coming back, resetting myself in the place that I grew up in, LA, and
Mhm.
keep telling everybody I'm back. Really,
Yeah.
it's been a lot of that. Hey guys, I'm still here. I'm here now. You know,
Yeah.
um,
What is that like? We as musicians, we spend years and years establishing ourselves in one market, right? In
yeah,
whatever market
yeah.
you're in, LA, New York, or I'm in the San Diego area or Nashville.
Hmm.
Um, what is that like for you to have to pick up, go elsewhere, reestablish, and then come back? Do you find that it's kind of easy to come back, reconnect, or is it starting from scratch all over again?
You know, in life, it's starting to get harder than it used
Yeah.
to be. As I get older, that starts to get a little harder because you start to crave stability
Mm-hmm.
and a little bit of grounding. And I think when you're younger, you can do that because it's, you don't have as many responsibilities, and you kind of just,
Mm-hmm.
you don't really crave like family as much. You kind of wanted to get away from that. But now
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of in the place where I'm a little bit craving stability and grounding. And so, being back here has been nice because my family's here. I'm from Southern California,
Mm-hmm.
Thousand Oaks. Was born here and then moved to Indiana, Arizona till I was about 10, and then moved back to Thousand Oaks. And that's when I started, doing music for real,
Mm-hmm.
as a session singer,
Okay.
so.
Yeah. Okay. So you're in Nashville. You came back to LA. What brought you back to LA, and what have you been mostly involved with since you've been back?
Yeah. Right now, I have been in. What brought me back was that me and my wife just needed to move back from Nashville because it was the place we just needed it for our
Yeah.
hearts, I think, more than
Okay.
anything. In terms of work and writing and music, for me, I love it in Nashville, and it's my second home. I go back there all the time, but we need to come back for both of our mental health. But so like I said, I'd been re kind of connecting with people.
Mm-hmm.
It's just starting to get busy again. I just got this little gig for a Disney animated thing I'm doing, and doing some other Disney stuff. Actually, in Nashville, weirdly, got to be out there again to do something. But it's been slow though in terms of getting myself back in the session singing world, because
Mm-hmm.
you leave that world and it kind of forgets you a little bit because there's a lot of great singers out here.
Yeah.
It is a small group though, so
Mm-hmm.
if you're lucky enough to get involved in it, it's a blessing. But I've also been writing a musical that I started working on it in the middle of 2020, the Gatsby project, and so we've been locked in with a deal with Virgin in Las Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a new hotel, and we're excited about what might happen with that. And it's been I've never done a musical before, but the process is so slow, and it's more
Mm-hmm.
of an experience too. So there's a lot of pieces that go into it. It's immersive, and Gatsby became public domain in 2020, so at least we don't have to deal with paying for the rights. But it's been a process, and it's kind of taking wings in lots of different ways that
Mm-hmm.
I can't really open up about as of now, but it is going to be something that's been exciting, but it's been a lot of work and a lot of stress.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of the new next thing for me. But I have also been very focused in writing music, and put the artist thing. I hate saying put it on hold
Mm-hmm.
because that sounds like I'm not doing it anymore, but I was releasing a song a month for 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I was really kind of very focused on that trajectory. And after I released the album, there was a bit of a lull and a bit of a depression in that I was sad, like it didn't do what I wanted it to.
Mm.
Um, and so, it's taken about this much time since I released the album to kind of feel like, okay, maybe I could release another song, or, because you put a lot into these songs, and it's all about quantity and less quality these days. So
Mm. Okay.
people are constantly just putting out a lot of music.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was that was tough to kind of go through that. But at the same time, life's all about learning these new little lessons and these little things. And for me, that was one that I needed to learn, because I was just, everybody, you put your heart into something, you're gonna get hurt. It's
Yeah.
always gonna, stuff like that is inevitable. So yeah, that brought me back to LA
Mm-hmm.
doing Gatsby, and I've been focusing on that. Had a great meeting today about it, and the session work. I'm doing a lot of that, and the family brought me back. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's great. Well, welcome back.
yeah.
Well,
Thank
there's
you.
a lot I want to ask you about with
Yeah.
the songwriting and with Gatsby.
Mhm,
Let's start with Gatsby, since
mhm,
that's a big deal. That is a really
mhm.
really awesome opportunity.
Yeah,
I know there's definitely aspects of it that you can't discuss at this point,
yeah,
but tell me what you can as far as what inspired you to start this project and how
yeah.
has it unfolded for you?
Well, it was originally my writing partner is Bradley Bredewig, who wrote The Fosters and Good Trouble.
Mhm.
He created both those shows. He's also a producer on Dear Evan Hansen and Moulin Rouge, and doing a show at the Walls right now, Invincible with Pat Benatar. And maybe 5 years ago, we met on another project, and we just hit it off. And I had been writing music. I went on the road with Wicked, and I had been always just sending him music because I originally it was kind of wanted to show him music that show him that I could write songs and maybe get him on his shows, Good Trouble
Mhm.
and whatnot. And then, over time, I just started thinking, man, I also just love telling these stories. I'm just gonna ask him if we could write something together, you
Yeah.
know. And so I did, and then we started working on this project that I had this idea for a musical that we started going on that, and that'll be goals we want to do as well. But we were working on that, and all of a sudden he was approached by another production company to do this immersive experience of a show, kind of like they did with Stranger Things during
Mhm.
COVID. So it was 1540 was the production company, and they asked him, and he looked up and saw that Gatsby was going to be public domain,
Mm.
and he pitched that idea, and then he to them, and they were like, "Yeah, let's go do it." So then he called me. I wrote a song, and then the ball started rolling after that, and it was originally just going to be an LA experience that turned into what it is now,
Mhm.
and it's super exciting. There's like it's on a it's a big scale deal, um, and it could be wonderful. And I'm, constantly crossing my fingers and constantly just like dumbing down how excited I am about it, because you never know. You just constantly, but I
Yeah.
know that it's going to be great when it happens,
Yeah.
and I'm really thrilled to be a part of it and have written the music.
Yeah, I'm excited for you. That's a huge deal. That's very cool. I can only imagine too, writing a musical, producing a musical, that has got to be an absolute beast of a project.
Yeah.
And you're telling me that so this is the first that you've written, the first that you've gotten involved in the actual writing production of one?
So I've written a bunch of like shorts,
Uh-huh.
here and there. Written tons of music, but with this also, it sounds a musical actually makes it sound like it's like a Broadway 24 song musical. This
Mhm.
is more of an experience, a spectacle, um,
Mhm.
closer to a Cirque vibe, but I mean, we try not to call it a Cirque show because it really just isn't. It's an experience, and it's
Mhm.
immersive, and it's 9 to 10 songs, so it's not a full musical
Mhm.
uh, deal. And so that's why it's been a little bit of a easier thing, because I think musicals often take 6 to 8 years to get up
Right.
and running, and people make that their life's work. So I've been fortunate enough that this is kind of a great segue into possibly writing a real big musical eventually.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely think this is the perfect segue for that.
Yeah.
But this one kind of just started rolling. I mean, also, you already have the source material from Gatsby.
Mhm.
You have the book, you have the movie, and I feel like I was able, and I was allowed to pull from all of it too, because it's public domain. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of it was a lot, not easier, but it was a lot more. It was easier for me to do than just pulling an original music out of my
Mm,
pocket. You know what I
mhm.
mean?
Yeah, yeah. That's so exciting. I can't wait to see, how that develops for you. I'll definitely be
Thank
keeping
you.
an eye
Yeah,
out, and I might have to take a
you'll
trip to
definitely see it.
Vegas to
Yeah,
come out and see it. That's amazing.
yeah,
Well, so you know what? I want to just comment on one of those one point that you made about how, some shows can take 6 to 8 years. And I think that that's something that the general public or even just the general music audience doesn't realize how
yeah,
long the life of a musical is from start to finish or
yeah,
from start to stage and
yeah.
just the years of rewriting, developing, casting, how long that process takes. It's really unbelievable.
Yeah. It's like I'm, a novice in that, because
Mhm.
this is like really my first musical I've ever.
Mhm.
Um, but I've been a part of, and this is the reason why I've been able to do this, is because, I've kind of, I'm 35 now, so I'm not a kid that hasn't experienced things. I've done I was on Glee for
Mhm.
4 years. I was on 3 seasons of it as a warbler. I think it was like 18 episodes. I've experienced on camera stuff where we're dancing, singing. I know what rehearsals like. I know it's necessary behind this, in the studio recording the music for that. I was a session singer before I actually got on camera.
Hmm.
I've been on big stages doing big shows like Wicked and Rock of Ages. I've been in Vegas. I did Rock of Ages at the Venetian for a year residency,
Yeah.
playing a lead role. So, and then I've done background vocals since I was 9 years old for movies and commercials and TV shows. So I've seen like what it takes. I had just never written one,
Yeah.
and I think that in itself helped me. Kind of like once the opportunity came, I knew what to do. Plus, I've been
Hmm.
writing songs, my whole life since I was a little high school kid in a rock band. So,
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, I kind of knew what to do, and I think I don't. I think it's, dude. Anybody can do anything if you just put your mind to it, put your
Yeah.
heart in it, and your heart's in it. Like, I don't think just because you got all the credits in the world doesn't mean you're the best at doing what you do. And I think people need to know that, because for this situation, yeah, it's my first musical, but sometimes your first musical is the best thing you ever did. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Like, that happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that. I love that point. And with this being somewhat of, one of your first experiences diving into, a production this
Mhm.
large, have you found along the way, have you had experienced any kind of that um, imposter syndrome where you think like, who am I to be doing this? And if so, how have you dealt with that?
My whole life is imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
I feel like everything that happens,
Envies.
I mean, anytime I do anything, I'm just like, what are you doing here? When I played Fiyero, I was like, how am I playing Fiyero? Like, there's
Hmm.
people that went to college for musical theater to do this.
Yeah.
This is my fourth musical I've ever done. So I felt like that's been my career, but it's not true. In the end, like, everybody's life leads to prepares you for things. You're not just falling into a position. I mean, there's a reason why I got Fiyero. It's
Right.
because I was session singing, working with Steven Schwartz, and then Mark Platt saw me and Grease Live, and then
Mhm.
these things all happen for a reason. So, I mean, but our minds can be dangerous things sometimes, and um, like, for sure for this, I've had imposter syndrome in terms of being like, wow, how am I involved in such a big production? But I always come back to, especially with this, like, you've been writing music and really preparing for this moment. It actually, for me, makes sense. This musical, it
Mhm.
really makes sense for me, and I feel like I want to do more of it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, that it just I feel I was prepared. You know what I mean? I think that's what big thing. It's like when you're prepared for something and it's working.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're gonna have imposter syndrome. That means probably you're a humble person. you know?
Yeah. Totally true, totally
Yeah.
true. And it sounds like, now fast forward to these days, you've had a long career where you've had those years to develop that self-awareness or that understanding of imposter syndrome. You know it when you see it, and
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
redirect your mind and kind of give yourself that affirmation that like, yeah, I guess I am being humble about this, but when you really look at, your career as a whole, you say, yes, I should be here. This is exactly
Yeah.
where I should be.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
just, you never feel, yeah, I never, I mean, I feel like I am old. 35, I feel like somewhat old in terms of just the industry. I've been here because I'm from LA and I've been doing this a long time, but I
Mhm.
also just feel like, man, I mean, I feel like everything that I've done has led to each point that I get to.
Yeah.
Um, so it's cool. I feel very grateful to have these little arms of kind of work that I'm doing,
Mhm.
because I think I'd get bored just doing one thing all the time.
Mhm.
Even if it's one aspect of the entertainment industry, I might just be like, if all I'm doing is musicals, singing and performing live, like, I think I'd miss the creative,
Mm.
behind the scenes writing the projects, or the writing the songs.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then the
Definitely.
session singing is the same way. I've been session singing since I was 9 years old, and it started out doing just background vocals for, big artists. Honestly, it was tossed into a giant, wonderful career. Getting hired by Bobby Page. I don't know if you know Bobby or Edie Lehman and Sally Stevens. These are all contractors when I was a kid,
Mhm.
and just inspiring people that put me on projects with these massive composers, and
Mhm.
um, gave me the opportunity to learn from the best on how
Yeah.
to, be in this industry and also be professional. I think that was a huge thing because I was just a crazy little ADD kid that, couldn't hold still.
Mhm.
So to be in these big, massive studios and have to be calm, I just learned a lot of lessons.
Yeah. Yeah, what a great start. That's perfect, segue because I wanna go back to the beginning with you and to see how
Yeah.
did you get started in all this? Because you were so young. Were you coming from a musical family, or tell us about how you got your
Yeah.
start?
My mom and dad met in the Continental Singers. My dad was from Dublin,
Okay.
Georgia, and my mom was from Santa Monica, and they just happened to meet in this Continental Singers group out of high school.
Mhm.
Yeah, out of high school. And they're great singers. Like they didn't end up pursuing it to their career, but they were always great singers. And you know, we ended up when we were kids, there's four of us. It's me and my older brother, younger sister, and youngest brother. We all sing in some
Okay.
way. And our whole family would do like we Von Hall family, they would call us back in, at my dad, we were at Calvary in Westlake, and we were singing 4-part harmony, 5-part harmony, you know, doing these songs. So I had that experience on stage of singing in church. I think a lot of those session singers have that experience too
Mhm.
from LA. So
Yeah.
my mom was from Santa Monica, and she knew at the time she knew a lady named Schillinger. Oh my gosh, the Schillingers. Lori Schillinger, and they were other session singers, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, your kids can sing. They should meet Bobby Page." And so we went and
Mm.
sang for Bobby when we were like 8 years old,
Wow.
and 8 or 9. And my brother ended up getting a job for the first time. I was too young. He got the show. He got the movie Anastasia, doing just background vocals in the choir.
Mhm.
And I was so sad that I didn't get to be a part of it. I was just like crying to my mom, like, "Why didn't they ask me?" I didn't understand. And then and Bobby was like, "We love Johnny, but he's too young.
Yeah.
He can't hold still." So then she gave me a shot. My first job, I think, was on the Drew Carey show, being like one of the kids singing. Oh no, the
Okay.
Drew Carey show. Yeah, I was his son in the Drew Carey show. And there's like 8 of us. One of them was the kid from Little Rascals, the smart kid,
Okay.
the glasses. And so we did that, and that was like my first job and first kind of doing background vocals. And then like my second gig or something like that was for this Michael Jackson,
What?
the history album, singing the "All I Want to Say Is That They Don't Really Care About Us." We were in the studio. It
No.
was like a bunch of kids, and I think it was an Edie thing because Michael Boddicker worked with him, and I think that's her husband. So
Mhm.
I think that's how that worked. I can't quite remember. I was still like 9 years old. But we
Jeez.
did vocals for that, and I think just I had all these amazing jobs growing up, and the experience was incredible. I did Armageddon, Deep Impact, Amistad, Hush, Jungle Book 2, Scream 3, Royal Tenenbaums. These are all the ones in the past, like a long time ago. Instinct, I say that one. The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, Prince of Egypt was a really cool one.
Mm.
Amistad was one of the coolest things because we got to sing. My favorites were Amistad, and I think Deep Impact was incredible because we got to sing in the Streisand studio with
Oh, wow.
who was the composer? Oh my god, Deep Impact. Um, I'm blanking, but they don't do this much anymore. But we had the whole orchestra, we had the whole choir, and we
Mm.
had the movie, the screen behind us, and the red light flips on, and he's in there, you know, he's conducting us, and you hear the piano start out in silence, be like,
Mhm.
dun, 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 dun. And it's just like it was just the most amazing moment. And I remember being that young and also just thinking, wow, this is incredible. Like,
Yeah.
I can't move on this riser though because it is squeaky. But like I remember just like really being thrilled with it, and I can remember back to that moment, and I was pretty young. Um, so it was, yeah, I got some pretty awesome experiences like that. Got to perform on the Donnie and Marie Osmond show with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. We
Mm.
did the American Teacher Awards every year with Christina Aguilera. Like the experience I've had as a kid doing session singing work was absolutely ridiculous. And now a lot of those singers, Fletcher Sheridan, whose session sings now everywhere, um, uh, oh my gosh, Nelson Beato, if you know him, he's just his voice is ridiculous. And
Mhm.
all these people that were kids with me growing up and now they're still doing it. It's so cool. And I still do it here too, as much as I get the calls to do it, but I've also kind of branched out to do a lot of different things. So it's harder to get those calls than they used to be.
Right. That's incredible. What an unbelievable start to your career at 8, 9 years old. So
Yeah,
you're 8, 9, 10, doing these major motion pictures in these huge professional studios with, major composers and everything. How does that start shaping your vision for your future as a singer
yeah.
performer? Were you thinking
Mhm,
at that time, well, I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm going to, session work is kind of my love, my passion.
mhm.
Or did it start pointing you towards something else? Were you, building momentum as far as like wanting to be an independent artist or
Yeah.
Broadway? Where was it pointing you?
I mean, it kind of, I always say this because I'm a unique case in terms of like when I have kids, like I don't think I'm gonna coach them the way that, you know, I should, I guess, because for instance, I was put into this industry
Hmm.
and it almost chose me more than I chose it.
Mm. Okay.
But at the same time, I'm a very, very lucky case where it's all I love to do.
Yeah.
It's all I ever wanna do, and I'll also, like, it doesn't always pay the bills for people. It's like you can't go into this thinking it's everything. Because if I did, I would only be session singing because that paid the bills, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? That gave me insurance, that's all this but session singing was incredible growing up, and it could still be amazing. I majored in music and learned, musicianship in college and theory and but I came back and I was so much more drawn to the performative aspect
Mm-hmm.
opposed to being behind the scenes. I crave being on stage and being in front of people
Mm-hmm.
and just like I don't know, it's just how I've always been. I've always been that guy, and that just that chose me as well. I mean, but I do think that I had a choice at that point to kind of continue to do what I was doing. After college, I came back, I connected with Tim Davis, and he led me down the roads of doing background vocals for Glee. And I was
Mm-hmm.
doing background vocals financially. What an incredible opportunity! And then I started being on camera with the show because there was this group called the Warblers that was offered up. Tim said, "Hey, Ryan Murphy's looking for some good-looking boys to be in this group," and I
Mm-hmm.
was sitting there and I was like, "I'll do it." And so it's just as easy as that. I think I had to send a headshot in and then they chose. But, they chose about 6 of us and we went on and we did Teenage Dream for that first episode and it blew up and then they kept some of us for the rest of the time.
Wow.
And that was the impetus for me to kind of keep going,
Yeah.
in that world. It was like I was a college football player too
Mm-hmm.
at Cal
Mm.
Poly San Luis Obispo,
Okay.
on a full scholarship playing, very broy football. And so to go on a show like Glee at this time in 10 years ago, or what was it? I guess it's way longer than 10 years ago. This is 2000. Oh no, it's about 10 years ago, actually. Yeah. 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I had no idea. I was nervous about getting into on camera work
Mm.
doing Glee. I was a big, tough football player, and I was like, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
now be in a theater group, and but I went on, and it literally fit me like a glove. I mean, it was like I couldn't have been more perfect for that show and that environment and those people, and it showed me, wow. John, you should try to sing and dance and act live too, because
Mhm.
that's something that that's what I learned doing Glee. I mean, I was put
Yeah.
shot out of a cannon with that show. I mean, I had no idea how to dance, never danced in my life, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden I'm in this dancing group, you know, and I'm the biggest guy in the group. I'm 6'3", football player, and so I chose the like most meathead role, which was the beatboxer of the group.
Uh-huh.
So, and that was right off the bat in the first episode. They're like, "Can anyone beatbox?" And I was like, "Me," and so I can beatbox like a 5 out of 10. I'm okay, but like I was like, "I'll do that if that's a feature or something,"
Yeah.
and it turned out to be,
Uh-huh.
but I think just saying yes was a good thing. So and then we were on that thing for a long time, and I don't know, the performative aspect of my life has always continued to be supported. I will say that acting wise, that was a brand new thing that I had to go take class for and try to
Mhm.
understand in order to get actual roles that involved emotion, and
Mhm.
that's now something I can do, but I definitely couldn't do it when I first got into it. But everything I get usually in terms of acting has always had the music element to it, the singing
Mhm.
element, and so it's really cool that they've all kind of gone hand in hand over my career.
Mhm.
Um, you know,
Yeah, yeah. You know what's really fascinating about everyone that I interview that's, done major work in the industry, the one through line that I notice about everybody is that it's never the singers who prepared, 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 and then ended up, getting these great opportunities. It's the singers who are basically prepared, but just have so much grit and
yeah,
just enough self-confidence to throw their hat in the ring or enough gall to say like, "Yeah, I beatbox," and
yeah,
just throw themselves in there and
totally.
and get this, just on the job training and there's something about that mindset that's so common that just says like, well, I don't exactly know how to do this, but I know I can. I know
Yeah.
I can figure it out. Do you
Yeah,
find that to be true?
isn't that kinda true about a lot of things though too? Like, no one's gonna be perfect no
Mhm.
one's gonna be the best. There's always a better person. There's always a
Right.
better, more prepared, more talented person, but the truth is, you can choose to be the most squeaky wheel. You can
Mhm.
choose to be, the most motivated or convincing. I don't know, like, that has always been a very big thing for me is, I know I'm not the best singer in LA because that would be crazy to say. Just go over to one of Stevie Mackey's Tuesdays, Taco
Right.
Tuesdays. Like every time I watch that, I'm like, oh, I'm never working again.
I quit.
Screw it. Like he invited me one time, and I was like, do I have to sing? I'm not singing. Like,
I'll just stand in the background and watch.
yeah. Uh, so it's just not it's that's not the
Mhm.
key ingredient is
Yeah.
who's the best. Um, it's really a big thing is how great are you to work with? Like
Yeah.
like how good of a person are you? Especially in the session singing world, people are, there's a lot of awesome people in that world that like, they stay close because they know they're dealing with like a big thing. They're dealing with a big property that everybody knows that they're lucky to be there,
Yeah.
you know? Um, so I mean, I I I definitely, yeah, I agree with you. It's
Yeah.
like
That really that's one of the probably one of the most fortunate things starting as young as you did is that you learned that probably that number one golden lesson of being in the business is that, it isn't I mean, your talent is definitely very, very important and,
yeah,
having the skill
absolutely.
set's very important, but it is what type of experience do people have when they work with you and is it
Mhm.
the type of experience they want to return to time and time again. How are you
Yeah,
showing up for people? And at the end of the day, people want to work with who they like.
yeah, and, I've over the years too, because, like, people will see my credits or see the session singing work and be like, "Whoa, That's, everybody who says to me that's a singer, that's what I've wanted to do. How
Mhm.
do I get involved? And like my answer will be the same. Move to LA
Mhm.
in terms of session singing. Move to LA and can you read music? Can you sight read music? Go take one of Gerald White's classes at SAG.
Mhm.
Go uh go be you have to engulf yourself in that industry,
Mhm.
and whether it's kind of so different with social media. I mean, posting, there's so many ways to do it, but I mean, because I can connect you to the next guy, to Jasper, and he's gonna say the same thing, like, okay, thank you, this is great, I got 100 people in line.
Yeah.
So put together an amazing demo. Go to one of Tim Davis's courses, or there's just so many things you could do before you ask for a phone number. You know,
Yeah.
um, but I mean, I'm always willing to like listen for sure. Listening to a demo, I think demos are huge.
Mhm.
It's just a representation of you, um, and like that. If you don't have a demo immediately, I mean, that's probably the first thing you need to do.
Right.
Is put together an awesome demo that shows off what you could do and let people know you're serious about it. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that seems like great advice too. And definitely maybe even looking at a demo as not having to be perfect, but at least something, some kind of calling card that you can put out
Mhm.
there. And if
Yeah.
anything, get some feedback on it,
Yeah.
and know that you can always go back and change and edit.
Follow your favorite singers. I mean, getting educated on is different. I'm totally willing to share any education. I think
Mhm.
it's kind of a weird industry to get into, session singing, if that is a thing that people want to know. It's like it's a small niche group of people that do it, and and it's not an audition process when you get
Mhm.
the job. Usually it's, you're contracted to do something because they know that you're a great tenor and you know how
Mhm.
to sight read, and we need three of them, and we need one of them to do the tenor two part and one to do the one, and the composer likes somebody that's a little bit more on the pop side.
Mhm.
So you're perfect. You know what I mean? So they need to know you. So it's getting in with those contractors, and
Mhm.
that's something that is hard to find. That is something that is hard
Yeah.
to, yeah.
Yeah, but that's great advice that you laid out. Going back to the education piece of that, um, take me back to your musical training. I know you had the in-studio training, of course, as growing up, the musical family and everything, but, at San Luis Obispo, were you majoring in music or what were
Yeah.
you
I
ex
was
e
majoring in voice,
okay,
vocal
okay.
performance.
Mhm.
Um, and I was playing football, like, so it was
Wow.
two very uniquely different things.
Yeah.
Um, Cal Poly is not known for its music department or anything, so, I went to Cal Poly. I checked out a couple schools and had a couple scholarships to other schools, but I knew that I wanted to major in music,
Mhm.
get more educated in that world, but I had to choose to also the football was a big element because it was paying for my schooling.
Sure.
So I chose Cal Poly, and Cal Poly isn't known for its music department, but it was such a small department. I got so much attention and so much,
Mm,
you
mhm.
know, um, yeah, attention that it just made it so much fun. Like I
Mhm.
loved my music experience there. Loved the professors. I have a lot of friends still from there. They gave me leeway on, knowing that I have, because being a music major, it's not it's not like get your homework done and then you're good. It's like practice
Mhm.
piano, practice, and it's repetition, and that's just the same as football. So the time that I had to do anything else besides playing football, working out, lifting weights, running, and playing the piano, studying my, scales and memorizing scales.
Mhm.
I mean, all those types of things. I mean, musicianship, that's just locking it in, it's
Mhm.
muscle memory, and that wasn't necessarily you can't really memorize what an interval sounds like, you know what I mean? You just have to hear it a million times till you know that that's
Just the muscle memory.
perfect fourth,
Yeah.
so, I mean, I had that experience in college, and it was awesome.
Mhm.
um, and I feel super blessed and lucky to have it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, with the department being as small as it was, I know up until kind of recent years, most vocal performance majors were really rooted in classical music. Was that the case for you, or was there any
Yeah.
contemporary study?
Yeah, ours still was rooted in classical music, but I was a weird case too because I was so pop. I mean,
Mhm.
I you know, the most pop they let me do was a Josh Groban thing a couple times, but
Mhm.
they mostly I was singing Nessun Dorma, and
Yeah.
I was a tenor. So, you know, yeah, I mean, it was classical for sure. But honestly, memory-wise, I if you try to ask me a question, I'm a good luck
Right.
remembering much
Yeah.
classical of that classical stuff, if I'm being honest with you.
Definitely. I'm the same. I studied classical music too, and just, life took me in a completely
Gosh,
different direction, and so
yeah,
I don't know. All I know is that I remember some fundamental things that I think
yeah,
really helped me as a vocalist
yeah,
along the way, but, I that's what I was gonna kinda ask you is just I'm curious to know if what that did for you for your pop stylings because you already had a
mhm,
career going. You already had
yeah,
your musical style, and then you jump into a world that is completely I mean, in classical study, there is a right and a wrong way to do it. In
yeah,
contemporary, there's not. So,
yeah, I know, huh?
how was that for you?
I think it was a good time to do it.
Mhm,
Now I just don't know. But, now I wonder what unless you're going in to be an opera, or you wanna be in the LA master chorale,
mhm,
like, because the sight reading and the musicianship and the theory were what are super valuable now
mhm,
for me.
mhm,
Um, but in terms of knowing say ate, all those things, like,
mhm.
it was cool to learn how people say things and how to write it out,
Yeah,
but I'm never gonna ever use that again for
yeah,
sure. Um,
yeah.
but I do feel grateful still of having learned that because I think like any industry, you
Mhm,
need to learn where you came from, learn
mhm,
where things have a broad span of or a deep history in because everything has a deep history and so I think in knowing classical has helped in some ways for me.
mhm.
Maybe the intangibles, but
Yeah.
still. Um, and I kind of am proud of it too, I think it legitimizes me in some ways now.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. I know I kind of always look back at my experience and I think, well, I think my biggest takeaway, and like you said, it kind of legitimizes that I believe, at least for myself as a vocalist, I want to know every dimension of my voice. I want to know
Mhm.
completely what the engine is
Yeah,
capable of doing. I may not
yeah,
use every gear or every feature of it, but I wanna know if it's there or not, and if
yeah,
I wanna pull it out of the, toolbox, I know that it's there and I can use it
yeah,
at any time.
I
And
know. Yeah.
artistically, it's nice to know that you can kind of experiment and try some different things, when you know
It
what
is
you're really
cool. It
capable
is
of.
cool. If you hear my voice on a pop song
Mhm,
or a country song, you would have no idea that I can also sing an opera song. I mean,
mhm,
that's a pretty cool thing, and then people are like, "Oh, how are you able to do that?" I was like, "'Cause I went to college for opera," you know?
mhm,
So that's a cool I like that. I mean, you look, your voice is the cool thing about the voice is it can do other things. A saxophone sounds like a saxophone every time,
mhm,
you know? I mean, it can translate, it could change a little bit, but it usually sounds like the same instrument. Whereas, we can sing and then we can sound like very different types of voices, you know?
mhm.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Um, so I mean, I think knowing other styles is an advantage as a singer.
yeah, yeah.
And opera to me strengthened my voice,
Mhm.
um, and taught me a lot of because I had never had a voice lesson before college. I
Wow.
just was kind of a natural singer that listened to Michael Jackson a lot and loved
Mhm,
that style, and so I would mimic who you listen to. It's just the way it is.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I listened to a lot of that. So and I listened to a lot of pop, and then I listened to a lot of emo punk rock, and so my voice is what it is now. But I think it would have been pretty one-dimensional if I hadn't gone to college and also realized I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so
That's
and
great.
yeah, pretty cool.
So pushing forward then, so you're coming from this incredible background. You've got the pop world, you've got classical world now. So now, there's so many dimensions of your voice you have to work with artistically. How
Mhm.
did you segue into the world of songwriting and more of that artistic pursuit?
Yeah. Well, I always wrote music growing up, like, and I was in a band called Out of Reach in in like freshman and sophomore year.
Hmm.
And we had like a couple pretty big opportunities. Like we were pretty consistent, rehearsals and doing gigs, and like probably not good enough to really make it big, but definitely great. And I wrote all the music, and it was terrible. Like I have recordings of some of those songs, and it's just embarrassing
So,
to listen to. But it did like it was a really great fun experience to, and also to look back and be like, yeah, I did love that, and I do love, what I mean. It's one of those things where if you were doing it as a kid and you did it for fun,
hmm.
that's probably something that you love,
Yeah.
and you kept doing it because I was such a distracted kid. I had so many things I could have done, and I wanted to write music,
Hmm.
and I would do that by myself on my guitar. So I did that, and then I went to college, and obviously I had so many different, focuses. I was playing football, and there was probably those first 3 years of college where I didn't write music. I was very
Hmm.
focused on sports and my music major. And then my junior year, I was like, I remember I was working with this guy like in New York who sent me like a track and said, "Hey, could you write to this? Because I could sing." I was like, "Sure." I wrote it, and I wrote two, and it's very pop. And I was like, "This is cool." I kind of loved doing that, just writing to that track, and it really came naturally. So I did the whole deal where I bought the equipment. I bought an M box two, which is
Yes.
like it's one of those, yeah, that feels like an ancient
Yeah.
tank piece of hardware. But I bought one of those, and I like learned how to use it. This was cool because I used my music money that I had bought, made from years back, session singing, to buy this equipment, bought speakers. I was in college in my, in my place. And it was an interesting time too, because this is a deeper, more personal time of my life, but I was going through an addiction. I tore my meniscus my junior year of college,
Hmm.
and I thought I was gonna go to the NFL. I had an agent, and I was, really excited about things, and I tore my meniscus. And so I got addicted to pain medication. It was like,
Mm.
and I didn't know I was addicted or anything. I just kind of was taking it every day, and it made me kind of a recluse a little bit. And
Mm.
so I bought all this equipment, and I spent 10 hours a day in my room writing songs and learning how to produce music, playing the keyboard, like playing my guitar, just like being a weirdo a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it was crazy because it was a time in my life where it was like a year and a half span where I
Mm.
just was, heavily addicted to drugs, and it was getting worse and worse.
Mhm.
But I was also super engulfed in my music, and when I graduated, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought I was maybe going to go to the NFL, and then that fell through, and then so I moved back home, and I had this addiction going on which nobody knew about.
Mm.
My parents didn't know, nobody knew, and started getting on a TV show where I'm making tons of money, and just fed my addiction more and more. So
Mhm.
that was not great for me. And then I ended up deciding to realizing, wow, this is a problem. It got to the point where I was heavily addicted to oxycodone, and
Mhm.
it was not good. So and no one knew still, by the way. No one ever knew. Never told anyone that during that time. So I got on stuff called Suboxone to get off that. And that took about 3 years. But that period of time was all session singing, working, and like just kind of hiding, embarrassed and a little bit in the dark, but I was always writing music, but I never released anything. I never wanted it. I never felt legitimate. I never felt I was in this holding pattern of kind of a dark place of like, I'm not worth releasing a song,
Yeah.
and it was a weird thing. And but I was writing all these very like personal songs. And when I got off Suboxone, which Suboxone just helps you get off it, it doesn't give you you don't get the withdrawals from the opioids, but it's still an opioid, so you still get addicted to that, and you have to wean off that because doctors, for a time believed that people should be on Suboxone forever. But I was like, this feels bad. This doesn't feel good. So I weaned down, and then I got off, and I went through a crazy amount of withdrawals. It was a life-changing moment for me, but it was like it was huge for me because I felt like I conquered a mountain, and when I got on the other side of that, I had so much to say and I had so much to share, and I really felt like, wow, I do want to release music. I do want to talk, and I do want to tell people in these songs. And so I started releasing music, and that's what kind of made me want to release the songs that I was writing. Not to mention I had been writing for other artists a lot, like all the time with my buddy Taco, like for, Sweden and songs and K-pop. And so when but this was specifically for my project, and I felt like, wow, I want to tell my story. And so if you go listen to my music on Spotify, which you please do, there's probably 24 songs. No, there's like 30 songs that I've released so far. And a lot of them are about my past relationship that I was in. It was super hard. And then they're about my addiction and my just kind of experience through all that. And then you won't find them to being like a story, like a book. You're going to read about these stories. It's more just you'll be able to feel it in there, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Wow.
so that was the thing that made me want to write music, and I realized I was good at it. And yeah.
That's a really, really powerful story, and thank you so much for sharing that. I did just put your links in the comments to your site and to your Spotify, but that's so incredible that you were fighting this or dealing with this on your own this whole time.
Yeah.
And kind of using music as a lifeline, would you say?
In life, it was ultimately everything would have suffered had it gone any longer. But because I think, and I always say this because addiction is something that sticks with you forever. And you can't really say like I overcame addiction, because it's once you're an addict, like there's something, I know I have an addictive personality, so I do know that. But before I got addicted, I didn't know that Jon Hall was capable of getting addicted. Jon Hall came from a super Christian family with, that those type of people don't get addicted to drugs.
Sure. Yeah.
These things all just didn't seem possible for a guy like me, but that's just crazy to say. And now it doesn't make any sense, but before it did. And so to go through addiction and come out of it, realize, wow, I can definitely be addicted to things. I have to be careful. And so knowing that for me was huge. And so what I was trying to say was that being raised in a family like I was, where, my family did have belief in me that I could be somebody, that I was special, that I had a future. And so I think that's what pushed me forward, because I really believed that myself. I believe that the medication I was taking was going to ruin my future.
Yeah.
And I think when I came to that, and that's a huge thing for addicts too, is you got to come to the conclusion yourself. Everybody's going to tell you, everybody can tell you around you, but if you don't come to the conclusion yourself, it doesn't end.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that's going to be really meaningful to everybody that's listening to this. There are so many things I want to ask you about just from your history, and I had hoped to talk about your marriage because you're somewhat of a newlywed, right?
Yeah.
And your wife is in the business, and I know
Yes.
that that's a whole nother,
Oh,
arena of questions. But
yeah.
I'd love to have you back sometime. But I
Yes.
want to thank you for taking the time to be here with me and to share so openly with us. And I want to close with one final question that I've been asking all my guests, and that is, what makes you unstoppable?
Ooh. Wow. What makes me unstoppable? I would say my love for music,
Yeah.
my love for this craft that I'm lucky enough and be to have the gift to do.
Hmm.
Because I know people get to do jobs that are 9 to 5s,
Yeah.
and people do jobs that are anything, anything else. If you're not doing your passion, I mean, I'm just so lucky that I get to make money doing what I love every day, even if sometimes I'm not making money doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
great. Great answer. Great answer. Well, thank you again so much. It was
thank
really
you.
great talking with you tonight, chatting with you, our little fireside chat for reals.
This is awesome.
Yeah, I hope that we get to meet in person at some
Yes.
time soon, and I can't wait to see how the show develops. And I'll be keeping an eye on you on social media. Everybody, please go into the comments and check out Jon's links, his music, his social media links are all in there as well. And thank you to everybody who joined us tonight. And I'll give you back the rest of your night. But thank you
Thank you.
again, and I will see you all back here again next Wednesday. Good
Thank you so much.
night.
Good night.